The morning light spilled into the Clark kitchen in soft, golden layers, touching the marble countertops and the neatly arranged fruit bowl as if they belonged in a magazine spread. Newport Coast always looked perfect this time of day. Quiet streets, ocean air pressing gently against the windows, a kind of curated calm that made even the smallest life feel like it didn't belong. Vanessa Clark stood by the island, her hands wrapped loosely around a warm mug, watching steam curl upward in delicate spirals. Behind her, she heard Daniel before he spoke, the confident footsteps, the faint scent of expensive cologne, the airy warmth he always put into his voice when he needed something. "Morning, sweetheart," he said, the words sliding in smooth and easy. "Close your eyes for me." She didn't close them. She only turned slightly, enough to see him approaching with a glossy brochure and 2 crisp white envelopes. His smile was gentle, theatrical, ready for applause. "I've been thinking," he murmured, placing the items on the counter in front of her. "You've been carrying so much stress this year. You deserve a break, a real one." She looked down. The brochure shone with ocean blues, pristine pools, and palm trees rendered almost too perfect to be real. Azure Cove Wellness Retreat. 10 days of complete rejuvenation. Daniel tapped the cover, pride glinting in his eyes. All-inclusive. Spa, beachside yoga, private suite. 10 days. Just you. A plain ticket slid from the envelope, landing neatly beside her mug. Tomorrow morning. First class. Non-refundable. Vanessa lifted it with steady fingers, though something in her chest tightened until it nearly burned. "It's thoughtful," she said. Her voice didn't shake. She was proud of that. His arms came around her from behind, warm, familiar, practiced. "You've given so much to this marriage, Ness. You're always on edge lately. I just want you to relax. Come back refreshed." He pressed a kiss to her shoulder, soft, coaxing, poisonous. For months she had noticed the shift, the sudden late nights at the office, the texts he hid by turning the screen away, the faint sweetness in the air that wasn't her perfume. She had learned to identify it the same way she identified the changing of tides outside their window. Quiet, subtle, impossible to deny. The perfume of betrayal, she called it privately. The scent that drifted in before the truth ever dared to show itself. And then, 2 weeks ago, Daniel had left his laptop open on the sofa. A rare mistake, a fatal one. She hadn't meant to look, but the screen lit up as she walked by, revealing a message thread she would never forget. "Kayla Monroe, baby, I can't wait. Daniel, just hold on. I'll send her away. 10 days. The whole house will be ours." Vanessa had read the words twice, then 3 times, until the letters blurred. She could still feel the coldness that spread through her spine that day. Sharp, metallic, precise. It had carved something out of her. The trust, the hope, the version of herself that believed him. Now, standing in their immaculate kitchen with the brochure resting between them, she understood the performance he was staging. He wasn't giving her a gift. He was clearing space, making room for someone else, counting on her gratitude, her compliance, her silence. She swallowed once, then looked up at him with the softest smile she could manage. "You're right," she whispered. "I think I do need a break." Daniel's relief was instant. It washed over his face like sunshine, bright and self-satisfied. "See, I knew you'd understand," he said, reaching for his coffee. "Start packing something light. You'll want your best dresses, your swimsuits, all that." "Of course," she replied. Hours later, upstairs in their walk-in closet, Vanessa pulled a suitcase from the top shelf. Dust rolled off the handle, the same dust that had settled quietly over her marriage long before she noticed. She opened the suitcase and began placing items inside, but not the ones Daniel expected. No sundresses, no swimsuits, no resort sandals. Instead, she folded dark jeans, a black turtleneck, and running shoes, the kind of clothes meant for movement, stealth, intention. Clothes meant for truth, not for rest. When she zipped the suitcase shut, a strange calm settled over her. Not peace, not yet, but clarity. Tomorrow, she would not be flying to a retreat. She would be walking straight into the truth he thought she would never face. Daniel insisted on driving, jingling the keys with an easy confidence as they stepped into the warm Southern California morning. The sun had barely risen, but the sky was already painted in soft, honeyed colors, the kind of sunrise that made Newport Coast look like a postcard. Vanessa settled into the passenger seat, hands folded neatly in her lap, while Daniel queued up a playlist he knew she used to love. The first notes of an old love song filled the car, sentimental and overly sweet. Daniel tapped the steering wheel in rhythm, humming, then singing openly, almost boyishly. "Remember this one?" he asked with a grin that didn't quite reach his eyes. She nodded, her gaze fixed on the passing streets, the eucalyptus trees, the clean sidewalks, the ocean peeking out between houses built too close together. "Yes," she murmured. "I remember." He turned the volume up, letting the song swell around them as if this were some kind of romantic farewell. In another life, maybe it would have been. But now, every cheerful lyric felt like a thread tugging at a wound she hadn't realized was still bleeding. He reached over and squeezed her hand. "You okay? Big trips always make you quiet." Quiet, she thought. If he only knew. John Wayne Airport appeared in the distance, compact and pristine, the orange roofs glinting under the sun. Daniel pulled into the departure lane with theatrical slowness, making sure to find the closest spot he could. He parked, hopped out, and grabbed her suitcase before she could touch it. "I've got it," he insisted brightly. "Just relax today. This whole thing is for you." They walked toward the entrance, the wheels of the suitcase whispering across the sidewalk. Inside, the terminal buzzed with soft morning movement, rolling luggage, rushed goodbye kisses, boarding calls that echoed through open spaces. Daniel set her suitcase upright, then turned to her with a tenderness so earnest it almost felt cruel. He pulled her into his arms, hugging her tightly as if he were sending her into a great unknown. He kissed her forehead, a long, slow press of lips, practiced, familiar. "Call me the moment you land," he whispered. "I'll be waiting." Vanessa looked up at him, studying every line of his face. The man she once adored, the man she'd built a home with, the man she trusted, the man who now lied with the ease of breathing. She memorized him, not for love, but for closure. "I will," she said softly. Daniel gave her one last smile, confident and satisfied, then turned and walked toward the sliding doors. He didn't look back. He didn't suspect a thing. Only when his silhouette blended into the crowd did Vanessa let her breath crack. Tears slipped down her cheeks, not from heartbreak, not even from anger, but from the quiet burial of 10 years. 10 years of believing, hoping, holding on. 10 years that now lay behind her like a closed door. She stood still for a few seconds, letting the grief move through her like a slow tide. Then she straightened, wiped her face, and wrapped her fingers around the suitcase handle. Vanessa turned her cart away from the check-in counters and wheeled it directly back toward the exit. Outside, the morning felt sharper, cooler, as if it were waiting for her to take the first step. She opened the Lyft app. The car arrived within minutes. Vanessa slid into the back seat and dialed the one person who needed to know. Stephanie picked up immediately. "Where are you?" Vanessa looked out the window as the terminal drifted away behind her. "He left," she said quietly. "I'm going there." The Lyft pulled away from the airport in a smooth glide, merging onto the wide boulevard that cut through the heart of Orange County. Morning sunlight settled over everything. Rows of immaculate homes, clipped hedges perfectly squared, palm trees tracing gentle arcs against a cloudless sky. It was the kind of calm that felt almost artificial, a world too polished to hold any real pain. Vanessa watched it pass through the window, her reflection faint in the glass. Her pulse thudded steadily in her ears, louder than the hum of the car. For a moment, she let herself take in the quiet, the manicured lawns, the wide streets, the pristine sidewalks, freed of any hint of chaos. It all felt wrong. The landscape didn't match the storm rolling inside her. Her phone buzzed in her hand. Stephanie's voice came through instantly, firm and controlled. "Vanessa, listen to me carefully." "I'm listening." "No confrontation," Stephanie said, each word clipped with intention. "You go in, you get what we need, and you get out." Vanessa swallowed. "I know." "No talking," Stephanie repeated. "Not to him, not to her. Anything you say could complicate the case." "I won't say a word." "Take photos, as many as you can. Faces, environment, anything identifiable." Vanessa nodded, even though Stephanie couldn't see her. "I will." "And record audio the moment you step out of the car," Stephanie added. "Just let the phone sit in your pocket. Don't touch it until you're done." Vanessa stared down at her trembling fingers. "Okay." "And Vanessa," Stephanie's voice softened, just slightly. "You need to leave immediately afterward. Don't let him talk to you. Don't let him get close." The lift turned onto a quieter street, the kind lined with citrus trees and driveways big enough for 3 cars. Everything about the neighborhood felt serene, as if betrayal couldn't possibly thrive in a place so orderly. Vanessa exhaled slowly. "I understand all of that," she said. "I do. But—" Stephanie pressed. Vanessa looked out at a couple walking their dog, smiling, waving at a jogger passing by. She couldn't remember the last time she and Daniel had smiled at each other without effort. Her voice dropped, barely above a whisper. "I need to see it," she said. "I need to see the exact moment when he realizes I know, when everything he's been building with her collapses." There was a long pause on the line. "Vanessa," Stephanie sighed. "I get it. I really do. Just promise me you won't do anything reckless." "I won't," she answered. "I just need that closure." The lift rolled through another pristine neighborhood, homes stacked neatly on quiet hillsides, each one seemingly untouched by human imperfection. The contrast made her stomach twist. "Call me the second you're out," Stephanie said. "I will." Vanessa ended the call and rested the phone in her lap. For a moment, she simply breathed, but her hands wouldn't stop shaking. Adrenaline prickled along her skin, sharp and electric. She curled her fingers into fists, willing them steady. The truth was waiting ahead, quiet, devastating, undeniable, and she was moving toward it mile by mile with no intention of turning back. The lift slowed to a stop at the edge of a quiet cul-de-sac in Laguna Niguel, just a block from the address Vanessa had entered. The driver glanced at her through the rearview mirror, offering a polite, oblivious smile. "Have a good day," he said. If only you knew, she thought. She stepped out onto the sidewalk, the door shutting behind her with a muted thump that echoed far louder inside her chest. The air here felt different, warmer, thicker, charged with the weight of what she knew waited ahead. Morning sunlight filtered through the sycamore trees, scattering fractured gold across manicured lawns. Birds chirped softly. Somewhere nearby, a sprinkler hissed to life. It was all so achingly normal. Vanessa began walking, one slow step at a time, her suitcase rolling behind her in a soft rhythm. The street curved gently, leading toward the house she once loved, a 2-story Mediterranean-style home with earthy stucco walls and blue shutters she had chosen herself. She remembered the day she and Daniel moved in, how proud he'd been, how grateful she'd felt. She had painted the kitchen, planted the hydrangeas, arranged the furniture, curated the artwork. Every corner had once held warmth. Now it felt like approaching a crime scene. Her heart beat in dull, heavy thuds when she turned the final corner. The house came into full view, perched on a gentle slope with a perfect view of the valley below. Vanessa halted. Daniel's SUV sat in the driveway, parked slightly crooked, as always. But beside it, bold and impossible to ignore, was a bright red Mini Cooper. Kayla's. Vanessa had seen it before. Too many times. For a few seconds. She couldn't move. The sight was both confirmation and insult. Brazen, shameless, tossed in her face like an afterthought. She pressed her lips together until they stopped trembling. She had come here for truth. Truth was now staring directly back at her. Vanessa resumed walking, slower now, as if every step dug deeper into a wound. When she reached the front door, she didn't hesitate. She reached into her bag, pulled out her key, and slid it into the lock. It turned with a familiar click. The same sound she'd heard 1,000 times. She exhaled once. Then she pushed the door open. The cool air of the house greeted her, carrying the faint scent of eucalyptus candles she used to light every evening. But beneath the nostalgia, was something else. Music. Low, rhythmic, intimate. And something worse. Laughter. Vanessa froze just inside the threshold. The laughter rolled through the hallway like a slow wave, soaking into the walls, mocking her. She recognized Daniel's deep rumble, followed by a lighter, breathier giggle she knew belonged to Kayla. Her fingers tightened around her phone. She slid the screen up, hit the recording app, and set it to capture every sound. The device slipped into her coat pocket, the soft rustle of fabric, the only sign of what she'd done. Then she stood still and simply listened. The music drifted from the living room, an upbeat, romantic track she'd once danced to with Daniel in their kitchen. Now it underscored her betrayal like background noise in a nightmare. She heard glass clinking, the murmur of flirtation, Daniel saying something she couldn't quite make out, followed by Kayla's murmured reply. Each sound felt like a splinter shoved beneath her skin. The house she had filled with love was no longer hers. It was the stage of her heartbreak, the place her marriage was quietly, carelessly being dismantled. Vanessa inhaled, slow and steady. Then she stepped deeper inside. Vanessa pressed her back against the wall, her breath quiet, controlled, barely there. The hallway was dim, shielded from the bright morning light pouring into the living room. From here, she could see only fragments, shadows moving, the edge of the white sectional couch, the flicker of their reflections in the glass coffee table. But she didn't need to see their faces. Their voices told her everything. Daniel spoke first, his tone relaxed, casual, almost proud. "She bought it," he said. "Completely." Vanessa's stomach twisted, but she didn't move. Kayla's voice followed, warm and airy, dripping with flirtation. "I told you she would," she teased. "You know her better than she knows herself." Daniel chuckled, an easy, self-satisfied sound that used to make Vanessa smile. 10 days, he said, lowering his voice as if savoring the words. 10 days, just you and me. This whole place to ourselves. Kayla laughed again, delighted, flattered. "You're terrible," she murmured, smacking him lightly. Vanessa could hear the playful tap of her hand against his arm. "Sending your wife away so we can have a little vacation." Daniel's voice dropped into something eager, indulgent. She needed this retreat anyway. Always so tense lately. Always hovering. I swear. She's become impossible to talk to without her second-guessing everything. Kayla hummed sympathetically. "Well, she won't be bothering us now." A soft rustling followed, the kind of sound that spoke of closeness, of bodies leaning in, of intimacy stolen in the middle of the home Vanessa built with her own hands. Every word they spoke was deliberate. Every giggle carved a deeper line through her chest. Every breath between them deep in the crack in her ribs. Vanessa's fingers curled into the wall behind her, nails digging lightly into the paint. She kept her eyes closed for a moment, not to steady herself. She was past that, but to fully absorb the truth. Not the half-truths she had suspected for months. Not the quiet doubts that whispered to her in the night. This was the truth, unabashed and unhidden. Her husband wasn't conflicted. He wasn't confused or overwhelmed or making a mistake. He was delighted. He was giddy. He was planning a life with someone else inside the very walls she had chosen, decorated and cherished. A fresh wave of laughter filled the room, Kayla's bright and tinkling, followed by Daniel's deeper echo. The sound slid down the hallway like a toxin, settling in Vanessa's lungs, and then something inside her shifted. The grief that had clung to her ribs for weeks, dense, suffocating, suddenly loosened. What replaced it wasn't sadness. It wasn't heartbreak or hysteria. It was clarity, cold, exact, surgical. Vanessa opened her eyes and breathed in slowly, deliberately. She stepped away from the wall, straightening her back until her posture aligned with the steel forming inside her. The tremble in her fingers eased. The sting in her throat dissolved. Her heartbeat slowed into something steady and resolute. She looked down the hallway, not at them, but at the space between herself and the living room. It felt like a threshold. Once she crossed it, there would be no going back. Kayla's voice floated out again, teasing, "So, what do we do first?" Daniel answered with a tone so smug it almost echoed, "Anything we want." Vanessa's jaw tightened. Enough. She took one final breath, crisp and grounding. Time to end this. And with a calmness that felt eerily like power, Vanessa stepped forward, leaving the shadows behind. Vanessa stepped out of the hallway and into the living room, leaving the shadows behind like a discarded skin. The room greeted her with a bright, almost blinding wash of California sunlight, warm and golden, spilling in through the floor-to-ceiling windows she once polished every Saturday morning. It illuminated everything with ruthless clarity, especially them. Daniel and Kayla lounged comfortably on the white sectional couch. Kayla was curled against him, legs folded beneath her, her bare skin glowing under the sunlight. She wore nothing but Daniel's unbuttoned shirt, his favorite navy one, the fabric slipping off one shoulder in a way that left little to the imagination. Her hair was tousled, the kind of messy that came from hands running through it. Daniel's hands. Vanessa didn't pause. She didn't breathe. She simply lifted her phone. The first flash burst through the room with a sharp, white snap, bright enough to slice through the music, bright enough to feel like a crack of lightning. It might as well have been a gunshot. Kayla jerked upright with a startled gasp, her eyes wide and unfocused. Daniel's head whipped around so fast the couch creaked beneath him. For a moment, neither of them processed what was happening. They just stared into the light. Vanessa pressed the shutter again. Flash. Kayla's mouth fell open, trembling, searching for words that wouldn't come. She clutched at the edges of the shirt, fumbling, desperate to cover her chest. The fabric slipped through her fingers. Flash. Daniel scrambled to stand, nearly knocking over the wine glass on the coffee table. His face went pale, then blotchy red, then ghostly pale again as the meaning of the moment sank in. "Vanessa," he choked out. "Vanessa, wait. Just, what are you doing here?" Flash. He shielded his face, stumbling one step forward, then another, panic rising in his voice. "Stop taking pictures. Stop." But Vanessa didn't stop. Flash. Her movements were steady, clinical, like she wasn't documenting an affair, but gathering evidence at a crime scene. In a way, she was. Every burst of light was silent judgment, silent justice, silent retribution. Flash. The shutter's rhythm filled the room, sharp, mechanical, merciless. Kayla finally found her voice, shrill and broken. Oh my God, Daniel. Do something." She clutched the shirt closed with one hand and scrambled backward, nearly slipping off the sofa. Daniel stepped toward Vanessa, one arm raised in a useless attempt to hide his face. Vanessa, listen, it's not what it looks like. Another flash cut off his words. Not what it looks like. The most cliched lie in the world. He had the audacity to reach for her, inside her house, while wearing the smell of another woman. Vanessa lowered the phone just long enough to look at him fully. For the first time in weeks, months even, her expression didn't waver. Not fear, not heartbreak, only resolve. Cold and unmarred, Kayla was now crouched on the couch, pulling the shirt closed like armor. Please don't post those, she stammered. Please, this wasn't, Daniel said. Vanessa didn't even turn toward her. Daniel's voice cracked as he tried again. Vanessa, honey, please. Can we talk? She stared at him, unblinking. Then flash. Another. Flash. And another. Flash. Every photo was a verdict. Every flash was a sentence. Daniel lowered his hand slowly, defeated terror widening his eyes. Vanessa, what are you doing here? Finally, she lowered the phone, the silence thicker than the sunlight around them. She didn't answer. She didn't need to. Daniel lurched forward, one arm raised, his hand trembling as he tried to block the lens. Stop it, Vanessa! Stop taking pictures, he barked, attempting authority, but the cracks showed instantly. His voice shook. His posture faltered. He wasn't commanding anything. He was unraveling. Vanessa lifted the phone a few inches higher, her expression unreadable. Kayla scrambled to her feet, the oversized shirt slipping dangerously off one shoulder as she clutched at the fabric. Her voice came out thin, breathless. Please, let us explain. Vanessa didn't even glance at her. No, the single word landed like a stone, final, heavy, without room for air. Kayla's mouth snapped shut. Daniel took another shaky step toward Vanessa, his tone flipping from anger to pleading in a split breath. Vanessa, please. You're overreacting. We can talk about this, okay? This isn't what you think. His chest heaved. Just put the phone down. I said no. Vanessa's voice remained calm, almost quiet, eerily controlled. And don't come closer. Daniel froze mid-step, blinking as if he couldn't quite believe she had spoken to him like that. Kayla shifted nervously, looking between them. Daniel, she whispered, do something. He swallowed hard and tried again, this time lowering his shoulders, softening his face, playing the role she had seen 100 times. Sweetheart, listen, you weren't supposed to see this. I didn't want to hurt you. You've just been so stressed and distant lately. And Vanessa raised a hand and cut him off. Don't pretend this started because I was stressed, or distant, or anything else you want to blame me for. Daniel opened his mouth, but she continued before he could fill the room with another lie. And before either of you asks, let's be clear. She lifted the phone slightly. I'm Vanessa Clark. Kayla blanched, losing whatever color remained in her face. You're his wife. The fear in her voice wasn't guilt. It was the sudden realization of what this meant for her. Her job, her reputation, her future. Daniel turned toward Kayla sharply. She knew, okay? She's known for a while. I didn't think. Don't drag her into this. Vanessa said simply. She's done enough. You both have. Daniel's jaw clenched. Frustration, desperation, and disbelief warred together in his expression. Vanessa, if you would just hand me the phone. He moved forward in a sudden, clumsy lunge. Vanessa stepped back immediately. Don't touch me. The tone was soft, but the warning was lethal. Daniel froze mid-motion. His hand hovered in the air, inches from her wrist, before falling slowly back to his side. She let the silence hang, cold and sharp. Then she spoke, each word clear as glass. It doesn't matter if you grab my phone. The picture's already auto-uploaded. Daniel blinked, his breath catching. I have backups, she added, and copies are already sent to my attorney. The shift in his expression was instant and violent. He froze. Completely. The room seemed to shrink around him as the word sank in. Attorney. His lips parted, but no sound came out. The color in his face drained, leaving him pale, almost gray. Kayla whispered something. Maybe his name, maybe nothing at all, but he didn't hear her. Vanessa watched his arrogance collapse in real time. The confidence, the swagger, the entitlement, all of it evaporated, leaving behind a stunned, shaking man who finally realized he had miscalculated everything. The panic came next, raw and unfiltered, flooding his eyes as he stared at her like he was meeting a stranger who suddenly held all the power he thought he owned. Vanessa didn't smile. She didn't gloat. She simply stood there, holding the truth in her hand, while Daniel Clark finally broke. For several seconds, the room held its breath. Daniel stood frozen in place, his face a shifting canvas of disbelief, dread, and something close to horror. Kayla hovered behind him, clutching his shirt closed with trembling fingers, her eyes darting between them like a trapped animal desperate for an exit. Vanessa didn't move. She didn't need to. Her stillness alone controlled the entire room. Finally, she spoke, her tone calm, almost conversational. Daniel, do you remember the prenup? His throat bobbed. Vanessa, don't. Let's not do this here. Not like this. You mean in our home? She asked. Or in front of the woman you've been sleeping with? Kayla flinched as if struck. Vanessa continued unbothered. You pretended you never read it. You joked that it was for rich people. You insisted we didn't need it because you loved me. She paused, but I read it. Every page. Carefully. Daniel's panic sharpened. Vanessa, please! She raised one hand, silencing him effortlessly. Page 6, she said. Section 2. The Newport Coast house, this one, right here, is my separate property, bought with my inheritance. Under California law, that makes it untouchable. Daniel's lips parted, but nothing came out. Behind him, Kayla shifted nervously. I didn't know that, she whispered. Vanessa turned just enough to meet the young woman's eyes. Of course you didn't, and it doesn't matter. Kayla's mouth snapped shut. Vanessa continued, her tone steady, each word slicing with surgical precision. Section 4. The initial capital used to found Clark Development, that didn't come from your savings. Her gaze locked on Daniel. It came from my trust fund, which means the majority of your company, its assets, its accounts, its contracts, legally belong to me. Daniel staggered back a step. No, Vanessa, that's not, no. You can't, my lawyer will. Your lawyer will confirm every word I just said. A faint whimper escaped Kayla's throat, but Vanessa wasn't finished. Section 9, she said softly, almost gently. The infidelity clause. Do you remember that one? Daniel's knees seemed to weaken. His hand gripped the back of the couch like he needed it to stay upright. That clause, Vanessa continued, gives me full control of our joint assets. Every account, every investment, every property acquired after our marriage. A pause. And since you generously supplied the evidence yourself, through texts, photos, and your delightful little performance today, I will be invoking it in full. Kayla's eyes filled with tears. I didn't know he was married, she whispered desperately. He said you were separated. He said you were cold, and stop. The word cracked through the room like ice snapping. I'm not interested in your excuses, or your lies. Kayla shrank visibly, sinking into the couch. Daniel, however, surged forward again, desperation taking over. Vanessa, listen to me, he pleaded. Please. This was a mistake. I was confused. You haven't been yourself lately. You're always stressed, always suspicious, and I messed up, okay? Her expression didn't shift. He tried again, voice cracking. We can fix this. I'll end it with her today. Right now. Just put the phone down and we can talk. Please, Vanessa, I'm begging you. You should have begged before you invited her into my home. His face crumpled. Then, predictably, he flipped. His voice sharpened, brittle with anger. This is what you wanted, isn't it? You set me up. You orchestrated this whole thing. You're doing this to take everything from me. She stepped toward the door, her composure absolute. No, Daniel, you did this, and you did it to yourself. She opened the door, letting the sunlight pour in behind her like a final verdict. You have 30 minutes, she said. Both of you. Be out of this house before I return with my attorney. Daniel's face drained of its last remnants of bravado. For the first time that morning, Vanessa saw it, the real fear. Not of losing her, but of losing everything he thought he could keep. She didn't look back. She didn't need to. Vanessa didn't return to the house that night. She didn't even return the next day. Instead, she stayed in the quiet guest room of Stephanie Ruiz's Oivine townhouse, a warm, orderly space that felt like the opposite of the chaos she had walked through. Stephanie had insisted she stay for as long as she needed, and Vanessa accepted without argument for the first time in weeks. She slept without the weight of pretending on her chest. Daniel, however, did not rest. Her phone buzzed relentlessly, every hour, every few minutes, every few seconds at times. At first came the apologies, long, rambling paragraphs filled with regret. Vanessa, I messed up. Please come home. Let me explain. It didn't mean anything. You mean everything. Please don't throw away our life. When she didn't respond, he shifted into the next stage as smoothly as flipping a switch. Anger, accusations, fire. You blindsided me. You set me up. If you try to take the company, I'll fight you. You won't win. Vanessa placed the phone face down on the nightstand each time, her expression unchanged. Stephanie saw the messages once, shook her head slowly and said, "Predictable." By the third day, Daniel's tone cracked into something raw, something unhinged. The desperation stage. Please answer me. We can fix this. Just tell me what you want. I'm sorry. Please. Please. Vanessa, I'm begging you. Don't leave me. Vanessa read the messages without emotion, like reviewing text sent to someone else entirely. The man who wrote them no longer belonged to her world, and she had no intention of stepping back into his. She finally muted the thread. Stephanie remained all business. On the morning of the fourth day, she walked into the guest room carrying 2 mugs of coffee and a folder thick with printed pages. It's time, she said simply. Vanessa sat up straighter. Everything's ready. Everything, Stephanie confirmed, opening the folder on the bed between them. Photos from the living room. Screenshots of the messages with Kayla. The audio recording you took the moment you walked through the door. The prenup. The financial statements showing your trust fund origins. It's airtight. Vanessa inhaled slowly. And the filing? I'll submit it today, Stephanie said. Petition for divorce. Request for exclusive occupancy of the Newport Coast home. Request for immediate financial freeze on joint accounts. She tapped the stack of documents. This is one of the cleanest cases I've ever handled. For a moment, Vanessa simply looked at the papers, stark black print on white sheets, each one a piece of a story she had never imagined she would live. A story that was ending in ways both painful and necessary. Will it be quick? She asked. As quick as these things can be, Stephanie replied. But with the evidence you have, and with the infidelity clause, you're in a very strong position. Vanessa nodded. No triumph, no warmth, just quiet understanding. Stephanie placed a hand on her shoulder, grounding. You did the hardest part already, she said softly. Now let the process work. Later that afternoon, while the sun filtered through thin gray clouds, Stephanie filed the petition electronically with the Orange County Superior Court. A single click, a digital confirmation, a shift in the air. It was done. The marriage wasn't over yet, not legally, but the machinery had begun. Swift, firm, unstoppable. And Vanessa didn't look back. The hearing room inside the Orange County Superior Court was bright, modern, and mercilessly quiet. Sunlight streamed through the high windows, catching on the polished floors and the clean lines of the judge's bench. It was the kind of room where truth carried weight and theatrics evaporated quickly. Daniel Clark walked in looking nothing like the confident man who once lounged on the white sectional with another woman. His suit was immaculate, but his eyes were hollow, ringed with sleeplessness. Beside him stood an aggressive, sharply dressed attorney, Mark Halpern, known for bluster and theatrics, a man who believed every case could be spun if he just spoke loudly enough. Vanessa entered moments later, composed and steady, walking beside Stephanie Ruiz. She wore a simple, elegant dress, her posture straight, her expression calm. She didn't look at Daniel, and she didn't need to. The imbalance of power was already palpable. When the judge called the case, Halpern sprang to life. "Your Honor," he began, "what we have here is a situation of emotional manipulation. My client was provoked. Mrs. Clark orchestrated a situation designed to entrap him, to fabricate grounds for financial gain. She entered the home without warning, took photographs without consent." Stephanie rose smoothly. "Objection. Opposing counsel is already misrepresenting facts." The judge nodded. "Sustained. Stay focused on the legal issues, Mr. Halpern." Halpern swallowed and tried again, louder this time, as if volume could rewrite reality. "My client was under extreme stress. His behavior was inconsistent with his usual conduct. This marriage has been deteriorating for months, and Mrs. Clark intentionally misled him." Stephanie stood once more. Her voice was calm, but it cut with precision. "Your Honor, the prenuptial agreement is clear. The house was purchased with my client's separate inheritance. The firm was founded with capital from her trust, and California law does not require at-fault findings to enforce a prenup." The judge nodded again, expression unreadable but firm. "Mr. Halpern," she said, turning toward Daniel's attorney, "even if your client claims provocation, the financial terms are dictated by the prenuptial contract. The court is not here to evaluate emotions. It is here to uphold binding agreements." Halpern attempted weakly. "But, counsel," the judge said sharply, "facts are facts." The proceedings moved quickly after that. Stephanie presented the documents, the signed prenup, the trust statements showing the origin of all major investments, the property deed listing Vanessa alone, the financial breakdown of Clark Development's initial capital, all her funds. Then came the evidence Daniel had handed over himself without ever meaning to, the photographs, the messages, the audio recording of his own voice bragging about sending his wife away, every word of it time-stamped, clear and damning. Halpern grew quieter with each exhibit. Daniel shifted in his chair, his fingers digging into the armrest. When the judge delivered her ruling, her tone was firm, final, unshakable. "Under California Family Code," she said, "the Newport Coast residence is the petitioner's separate property. The business, founded with separate capital, is awarded predominantly to the petitioner. Joint assets will be allocated according to the infidelity clause agreed upon in the prenuptial contract." She turned one page. "Mr. Clark will retain his personal belongings, clothing, and a modest financial concession for transition. No further claims." Daniel's face collapsed inch by inch, devastation carving into the lines around his mouth. Kayla wasn't there, but word reached her soon enough. 2 days after the verdict, she packed her bags and left him. No explanation, no apology, just silence. Daniel stood alone in an empty apartment he could barely afford, staring at the remnants of a life he once believed he owned. Everything else, the house, the business, the money, the future, belonged to the woman he underestimated. 3 months later, the world around Vanessa felt different, lighter, but not in the way people imagined. Friends who heard about the divorce expected her to glow with victory, to radiate empowerment, to feel triumphant after everything she had endured. But triumph was never the feeling that came. What settled inside her instead was a quiet she didn't quite recognize. Not joy, not revenge, just relief. A strange, deep quiet, the kind that follows a long surgery when the anesthesia fades and you realize the worst is finally over. The rain had started early that morning in Irvine, soft and persistent, misting the windows of the cafe where she and Stephanie sat across from each other. The place was warm and smelled faintly of cinnamon. Outside, people hurried under umbrellas, and cars hissed along the wet pavement. Stephanie wrapped both hands around her mug, studying Vanessa's face with the same careful attention she gave every legal document. "You seem different today," she said. Vanessa stirred her tea slowly. "I am. Good different or bad different?" Vanessa breathed out, watching the steam rise. "Just real. Honest. I'm not pretending anymore." Stephanie nodded, waiting. Vanessa took another moment before continuing. "Everyone keeps asking if I feel powerful, victorious, like I won." She shook her head gently. "I don't feel any of that." "What do you feel?" Stephanie asked softly. Vanessa searched for the right words. "It's like something poisonous was inside me for years. I didn't notice it at first. Then it started hurting. Slowly, quietly, but I kept ignoring it." Her eyes lifted to meet Stephanie's. "And then one day, it got so bad I had to let someone cut it out. The surgery saved me, but the healing hasn't been easy." Stephanie's expression softened. "It wasn't revenge," Vanessa added. "It was removal, necessary removal. And now that it's gone," she rested a hand lightly over her chest, "I can finally breathe again." The rain tapped gently against the window beside them. A couple laughed somewhere near the entrance. A barista called out an order. The normalcy of it all felt grounding, like the universe reminding her that life existed outside the ruins of her marriage. "You survived something heavy," Stephanie said, "and you survived it with more grace than I've ever seen." Vanessa smiled, though it was small and tired around the edges. Grace wasn't the goal. It was just the only way I knew how to get through it. They fell into a quiet rhythm, sipping their drinks, letting the peaceful gloom of a drizzly day settle around them. After a while, Stephanie leaned back and studied her again. "So," she said lightly, "what happens now?" Vanessa didn't answer immediately. Instead, she reached into her bag, the leather one she bought years ago, and almost threw away the night she discovered the affair. She unfastened the clasp, rifled past her wallet and a set of keys, and pulled out a single folded piece of paper. Stephanie raised an eyebrow. "What's that?" Vanessa unfolded it slowly, smoothing out the creases with deliberate care. The corners were worn from fingers, tracing them over and over in quiet moments. On the table between them lay a plain ticket. Stephanie leaned forward. Her eyes widened. "Vanessa," she whispered, "this is one way." Vanessa nodded, a calm certainty settling across her face. "I think," she said softly, "it's time to go somewhere I've always wanted but never allowed myself to be." The rain outside continued to fall, steady and cleansing, like the sky agreeing with her. The ticket lay between them on the cafe table, its ink crisp and unmistakable. Rome, one way, for the first time in what felt like years. Vanessa's smile didn't feel borrowed or forced or carefully assembled for someone else's comfort. It rose slowly, naturally, stretching across her face with a quiet warmth she barely recognized. Stephanie exhaled a soft laugh. "So this is your next chapter?" "It is," Vanessa said. Finally, she traced one fingertip along the edge of the ticket, feeling the thin paper beneath her touch. She had held it so many times over the past 3 months that the corners had softened, but each time she looked at it, her breath caught the same way, as though she were holding not a destination, but new life. "I've wanted this since I was 20, she admitted, to go to Italy, to wander the streets in the early morning, to learn the language, to take cooking classes from old women in small kitchens, to breathe slower, to feel like myself again." A pause. "No, to feel like myself for the first time." Stephanie nodded. "You deserve it." Vanessa smiled again, her eyes lowered. Daniel always said it was frivolous, a waste of time, something people did when they had nothing better to do. She shook her head, a faint sadness in her voice, not longing, but disbelief that she had ever let him dictate the boundaries of her dreams. He made it sound silly. "And now?" Stephanie asked. "Now," Vanessa said, folding the ticket back into her bag. "I don't need his permission. I don't need his approval. I don't need anything from him anymore." The truth settled deeply inside her, solid grounding. For the rest of the afternoon, they talked about logistics, storage units, forwarding addresses, what cities in Italy were safe for solo travelers, which neighborhoods in Rome felt both lively and peaceful. But even as they discussed details, Vanessa felt something drifting within her, a loosening and untethering. When she finally stepped outside into the drizzly Irvine evening, she let the cool mist touch her face. It smelled of wet pavement and eucalyptus and quiet goodbyes. She drove home. Her home now, the Newport Coast house reclaimed and purified, stripped of its ghosts. By the time she arrived, the clouds were beginning to break, revealing streaks of soft California blue. The air felt strangely sweet. Inside, the house was calm. She had repainted the living room, rearranged the furniture, removed everything that once carried Daniel's scent or presence. The white sectional was gone. The walls were new. Even the lighting felt different. This house had been bruised by betrayal, but it had healed alongside her. Vanessa walked upstairs to her bedroom, opened the curtains, and stood before the large window that overlooked the sweeping valley below. The sky was opening in pale gold, the last remnants of rain catching the light like scattered diamonds. She rested her palm against the glass. For years she had imagined standing next to Daniel in moments like this, sharing sunsets, sharing dreams, sharing a life. But she understood now that she had been standing alone the entire time. She had loved someone who had never truly seen her, and she had held onto a marriage that had long since slipped through her fingers. Yet, here, she was stronger for the breaking. She inhaled deeply, letting the air fill her lungs until something inside her loosened completely. The heaviness she had carried for years fell away like old skin. Her reflection in the window looked back at her, not the woman who endured, not the woman who doubted, but the woman who finally chose herself. "Now I can go," she whispered. It wasn't a declaration. It wasn't a victory cry. It was a truth, quiet, steady, earned through fire. Tomorrow, she would board a plane to Rome with a single suitcase, an open heart, and no return date. It was not escape. It was rebirth.